Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna, and it is Monday morning. Is it? Is it Monday Is it Monday morning? Really? Already? All right, it is. And I had a thing this morning. What should we do on this morning show? And I thought I have so much stuff. It becomes a question of what should we do when? Um, and I thought, you know what? Let's go to Pearl McGowan, right? Go back to basics. And I thought I want to return to her first book, the patterns that what was it called? The designs beneath the dreams beneath the design. And I couldn't get to it because I have so many boxes on the floor of my living room from clearing out my studio that I couldn't actually make it to any of my bookcases. So I started look. This is like the beginning of a weird fairy tale, isn't it? So I started looking in the boxes, and I immediately the first book I touched, I found this, and a bunch more. And I thought, hang on, what have we got going? What have we got going here in this box? Because this is from like one of the halls, of the past, the days of yore. And if you can see, I could tell that these were all three dying binders from somebody, somewhere, at some time. And by Anne something. Ashworth, by Anne Ashworth. Those are books. Those are book references. So I pulled these three, and I think we're going to look at one of them today. I hope that you enjoy dying or conversations about dying. This really is interesting because it will force us to talk about whether you are a person who's interested in dying for rug hooking or punching or whatever or not. It will force us into conversations about historically popular dye techniques versus what's available in 2025 and contemporary dye techniques. And those are two different conversations, and we're going to put them together into one show today. So, what I've got, I think, for today, for the most part, is going to be this binder. You can see that the owner has done a little collage on the side. Anyone can die, and that refers to this book called Anyone Can Die. So we're going to look at that together. We'll see how it goes. Some of these other ones, just so you know, there's a whole bunch is called Chromacraft, and that is another book with corresponding. That is another book that looks like this. That's the Anne Ashworth book that has a corresponding set of swatches. It's the whole, it's the whole book. So that's a to be continued. And then there's another one that's called Color Flow. And in another binder, they did not come with these binders, right? Can you imagine? I can't, honestly, in my life at this moment, I can't imagine having time to put a binder together and cutting out collage letters for the cover. It is charming in the best way, but it makes me nervous too. Just the very thought, right? So this Color Flow refers to this set of two books, and these we still see a lot. We see all of these books a lot online on the rug hooking, buying and selling Facebook groups. So it might be that we return to the latter two soon. Let's see how it goes today, looking at this one first. Anyone Can Die, using this book as the sort of canon that goes along with it. But wait, first let's say good morning. I want to say good morning to you, Catherine. Great to see you. Oh, wait a minute. Am I at the top? Yes. Yep. I'm sorry I'm on an hour later today. I did not realize that Teddy had a doctor's appointment this morning. And also that Jocelyn didn't do her homework over the weekend. So we woke up super early to do homework on the middle colonies like Pennsylvania, sort of New York, and early mills in New Amsterdam and Pennsylvania. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot at 7 a.m. So it was a crazy morning, and I'm with you an hour later. I'm so sorry to upset your schedule, Cheryl. Great to see you. Happy coffee time. Is it a beautiful day over there on the Cape? Oh, thank you. Friday's my birthday. It's coming fast and furious. Oh boy, I haven't got a plan in place yet, but we'll see how it goes. We'll do something, I suppose. Robin, great to see you in Wisconsin. I feel like, oh God, there's been so much Wisconsin talk this week. Out of my small group at the church of new members, I'm in this little circle with people who are new. It's kind of like the class of the new people. Out of the five of us, two of them are from Wisconsin. Those are funny odds, right? Like in Connecticut, they're not related. They were both like, whoa. Really interesting. A lot of Wisconsin talk in my life lately. Catherine, great to see you in Southern California, sunny and warm there. I'm wondering if we're headed toward our first spring days. I was thinking the same thing as I was sitting on the couch putting this show together with our slides. The sun was hitting me, like X-raying my body, and it was miserable trying to block it because it was so hot. And I thought, is this spring? Is it coming through the window right now? It's kind of exciting. Sharon, great to see you. Hello from sunny spring-like Vancouver. There we go. Have to go work in 30 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry. The time is I won't do this unless I have to, you know. It screws my day up too because it skewers everything, doesn't it? Sorry about that. From a distance, the thumbnail. That was said on Facebook too. Looks like little ball gowns. That is so funny, isn't it? You're the third person to say that. I love it. Naomi, great to see you. It is the Mondayest Monday. Naomi and I have been going together going back and forth with the whole Tigger crew this morning with hotel stuff, and it's a lot. It's been a lot this morning already. Lisa, great to see you. Happy Monday. Welcome back. Karen, welcome back. Good morning from Black Forest, Colorado. It is a gorgeous 60 degrees morning over there. That's amazing. That is tempting. Gayla, good to see you. This is going to be a great episode. Yes, if you're into dyeing, this is going to be, even if you're not into dyeing, we will make it interesting and we will make it universal. But I think interesting conversations arise when we start talking about color and dyeing. And again, what has been done historically versus what is much more common to do these days. That's another conversation that should come up, only because we have, I think, busy lives in general, right? I'm not saying busier than when a lot of these books were popular, like this one's 1953, the one we're working from today. I wouldn't say that our lives are necessarily busier now, but I think the amount of noise is more now with the internet and everything that's going on in the world. It's just more noise. And of course, every bit of noise takes away from your sanity, right? You only take so much noise before you implode. So I think it's just very different times now. And knowing that a lot of people are much more inclined to figure out shortcuts or ways to do dyeing without using measures that are like 2 grains, right? Like it's medieval times and we're doing witchcraft or something. So we're going to talk about that today too, how things equate, and also substitutes of colors that are from other brands. This book refers to Cushing. I think it refers to Cushing. Yes, it refers to Cushing. I can tell by the names right out of the gate. It refers to Cushing. So we'll talk about all that. Let me wrap up my hellos. Betty Ann, great to see you. Bonjour to you too. You'll be there I'm only here for 1 hour on weekdays, so you're probably going to catch all of it. You have another meeting. Vintage dyes reminds you of your mère, grandmother. These were her colors. Absolutely. It is like the colors of that period. Just like if you hear music, right? If you listen to music of that period, it's like just what those people would have heard and listened to, exactly the same, right? And it's very true. There is a set of colors. Oh, T, good to see you. Good to see you. There is a set of colors that really is sort of signature mid-20th century colors. And again, 1952, this book that we're looking at today, these are the very colors. So we'll talk about that, not in a patronizing way. It's just, color, aesthetics change, fashion changes for color too. In fact, my closest friend growing up when I went to college the first time, undergrad, she became a colorist. Like her job was to decide within the fashion world what colors would be popular in the next year. They would project forward more than a year. So it would be like 2 years from now, what color is really going to be in. And, part of it is dictated by trends, universal trends and interior decoration, fashion, everything, like the whole creative world. But a lot of it is dictated by individuals, right? I mean, people get to say, well, it's not going to be turquoise this year. Sorry, it's just not. It's going to be Wedgwood. And that's a job, and that's a life, and those are the tastemakers who change our decor, right? They change the quilt on your bed, because when you go to TJ Maxx and you think, well, enough with this, the dog's had his way with this, and we've had a few accidents, and you go in and the only things that are for sale are things that other people decided the colors on, unless you're making your own bedding. We're making our own rugs, but what else are you making for your house? Even paints, like with Benjamin Moore, even Pantone colors. There is a Pantone of the year every year. There are collections of Pantones every year, and they reflect the color trends that year. So when we talk about color, we're not talking about something that is finite. We're talking about something that is a very much a moving target. We're talking about something that has a fashion range that goes in and out of fashion, but we're also talking about something that is subjective, because you might look at some of the color swatches in this book and say, those are my favorite colors still. I don't care how old or old-fashioned they are. Those are my favorite colors, and they always have been. Or you might look at some of the colors and say, I don't like any of these colors. They remind me of this or that. And when you layer your own feelings about color, and color is one of those things that we feel strongly about, whether you know it or not, or why you dislike colors or not, it is something that we have really strong personal reactions to. So you can be very affronted by a room when you walk in and you think, oh God, these colors, who would have chosen this? Or you can walk in and say, I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I want my living room to be exactly like this. So conversations on color are funny, and they are not fixed at all. And that will be part of the fun for today. T, good to see you. You love collecting those old dye books. It's like capturing a piece of history, and usually there's interesting tips and reminders of how to dye. Absolutely. We'll look at that too. We'll look at the text from this book. These are collector's items for sure. I mean, these are staple bound books, right? This, I was going to say, are the staples there? The staples are there. I mean, it's an easy staple bound book. It's not even like you'd have to like put your body weight down to staple it. It's just a few pages. So it is a wonderful gift grabbing and finding these when you do, because they're not being printed, right? They are not, as far as I know, they're not currently being printed. These are not print on demand items. These are vintage items. And when they're gone, they're gone. Now, the good news is there were more rug hookers back then. Just numbers wise, there were more. Pendulum could swing. Hopefully it does, and that'll change again. But at this time, a lot of people did have these books, and it was very typical for people to dye as part of the process. Because if you were learning how to rug hook, for example, from a certified teacher, whether it was a McGowan certified teacher or it was a Mrs. Harry, why do I always do this? Mrs. Harry, come on, I always say David, and that's always wrong because I'm thinking of the magazine, Mrs. Harry King, it's King, isn't it? Or anybody else who gave certifications at that time. Dyeing was a big part of that certification. So if you were learning with a teacher, you would be learning the color side of it and the dyeing side of it. The exception would be, did you learn on your own, or did you learn from a family member who maybe only used thrifted clothing or used natural dyes from things that were found, plants that were found in the yard or the neighborhood? If that's the case, then you didn't do a lot with dyeing. But in general, in the 20th century, most people did. So hence there are a lot of these little books flying around if you're lucky enough to find them. The bad news is, because it's ephemera, a lot of people threw them out and thought, anyone can dye what? No, welcome to modern times. No thanks. So a lot of this stuff would have gotten thrown out, just like old rugs that were worse for the wear. Let me just finish our Barbara. Good to see you. You love these older dye sets. I'm on a mission to match my swatch sets with their booklets, books and pamphlets. That's a great angle too. Let's talk about that. Dave, great to see you. Happy Monday. Sharon, the only acid dyes I have used are Dharma. Jessica, hello everyone. Jessica, congratulations on your series of Caswell carpet blocks so far. I have not heard back from them, by the way, in Vermont, and I'm going to write them again this afternoon. I know they were waiting for a board meeting to talk about our possible display there, but I am hot on them, and I am going to chase that this afternoon. You're doing such a great job with those. It's incredible. Kaz, good to see you in Wisconsin. Oh, I'm sorry. I noticed there were 2 up there, and I don't know why, because we're not behind on our anythings. Interesting. Sorry about that, Kaz. Just getting started. It's great to see everybody. Welcome back. Karen, my grandmother's beautiful rugs were all dyed with RIT dye. Interesting. See, this in itself is an interesting conversation. Let's go back to Barbara said, one of your missions in life is to compare these swatch sets to some of the rugs that you have, and also maybe in some cases rugs that you would like to repair. Now, Michelle, great to see you. This is a great and worthy mission, right? Matching a rug, an older rug to an old swatch set. That is a worthy mission. Whether or not you find the color, right? I'm just turning around because I don't know if you can see them, but I've got tons of old swatch sets over here that are different brands. I've got tons and tons. These are potpourri. And I do have a reference to, potpourri was also sold at Dormill. This set is called coral, right? This is not what I would think of as coral. This is what I would think of as like brick. But, you know, they're all different. There's a lovely gray set. This is Katie's Colors with a K. God, do I hate alliteration when it's illiterate, but very cute and of its time, I'm sure. Katie Puckett, beautiful set. Dormill, of course, some lovely old ones, and many of these are still in stock as color sets. Mahogany from Potpourri. Potpourri is one of the big ones. Again, dated. I only say dated. I don't say dated because the colors ever went out of style or that I dislike the colors or the color range. I say dated because they're just not there anymore. They're like defunct. And it's also very hard to find them. But yeah, potpourri swatches. I happen to pull my potpourris. And this is like an early piece of ephemera. I might just frame this. Advertisement from the Dormill store. God knows when. This belonged to Mrs. S.F. Robertson of North Conway, New Hampshire. So I must have gotten this from someone at some point, possibly in New Hampshire. But it does include all of the potpourri swatch sets. And I'm holding them in my hand, right? Hopefully they come into focus. But this is interesting to have. It's also interesting to compare these colors to the ones that we'll see in the book because the potpourris are still going to be the Cushings, right? The Cushing dyes are available from like the 1880s. Other dyes come into the scene come onto the market more in more recent times. So Dharma is a more recent company. I don't know off the top of my head when Dharma or Prochem set up and how long we've been able to get Dharma and Prochem colors. But I will say this, just to get us in the right mindset, the thing about now that's different than them, noise aside, craziness aside, modern times aside, right? They had modern times too. We have a lot more dye colors, right? That's the bottom line. So there's a lot of colors in Cushing. They are traditional colors, and they are packaged the way that they have always been packaged, whether the inner liner is foil, which is my favorite, or paper, which is my least favorite. Actually, I think my least favorite is a little plastic bag. It's like, for me, it's like a little cancer contraption. It's impossible to get stuff. I always wear a mask, right? Loose powder. But those packets have been those packets in those colors since the Victorian period. And yes, they do add new colors, like Flower Power is a new color. It's beautiful, very different color. I will say, whether we're talking about Cushing or Dharma or Prochem, almost all of the colors have an equal or almost identical color in other brands. Yes, there are infinite colors to our eye. I just had this conversation with my son Teddy yesterday. Do we see the same colors as cats, right? Like, sometimes I'm just not in the mood. But no, of course we don't. We have different eyes, right? So it's different arc, it's a different spectrum, and there's different colors in the spectrum. And of course we can't know for sure, and I can't know for sure that I'm describing the same color that you are. That's when emotion comes into the conversation. I show you something and I say, what color blue is this? And you say turquoise, and I say teal or something like that. I would say turquoise in this case, but maybe I would say something more specific, like mermaid blue or something like that. And maybe you would say something more specific, like neon blue, or who knows. But we might have different words for the different color. And there's a problem right out of the gate, because we're talking about your rug and you say, do you think I should use mermaid blue or cornflower blue? And we both have different ideas of what that word means. And here we are at the guild meeting, and we're looking at the piece of fabric, and we're looking at it, the same piece, and we still have different ideas of what that piece is called. That can happen when language doesn't match like our imagination, right? The language fails. So that's the reason why I just mentioned it, the colors, the standard colors. There's a new one every year. There's new sets. The colors for paint. There's a reason why those go by number, because if you start calling that blue turquoise blue, then you are effectively influencing other people's idea of the language. And if theirs is different, there's going to be disagreement, right? Or negative feeling, like that's not how I picture the color coral. I just said this does not look like coral to me. I feel like coral should look like coral, like from the sea. It looks like bricks. So language is a moving target, and we often go to numbers for Pantone. Isn't that? Yes, thank you, Dave. Thank you. Um, oh, Michelle, thank you. I'm sure I don't. I'm so tired lately. Pantone, thank you. I know. Oh, Teddy. Um, so bearing that in mind, Cushing has always used names for colors. And to be honest, even if the name isn't my idea of what that color actually is, it is more charming and romantic to refer to a name, isn't it, rather than a number, right? We like to be referred to names ourselves, right? If I started calling you number 723, you wouldn't like that very much, would you? I mean, that would be very impersonal and rather insulting. I'm sure colors feel the same way. So as we go through this and we look at some of the colors, I want to talk a little bit about this book and how it's presented. But I also want to make the point going through that there are two extreme ways to dye. And let's pretend that none of us have a rug cooking business, including me, right? So I'm talking as someone who likes to dye colors, and I do not have a rug cooking business. And it's not one of the thoughts in my head that I would ever have to recreate the same color exactly twice or 100 times in a row, right? So let's just take that off the table and let's just talk about dyeing as if we're all just having kitchen times, kitchen fun times. Lisa says, I was in the wrong live. I think there are 2 set for noon. Gosh, that would be incredible because I've never, ever been able to set one in advance before. That would be crazy. That would be crazy. That makes me worried. I hope everybody finds their way here. I don't dare shut it off because I won't be able to get it back. A wonderful teacher recommended sticking to the color wheel names and not fashion names. It's another approach. And of course, it does depend. Now, choosing colors or choosing which dyes you like the most, whether you say like, I'm a Dharma person, what would be the main reason for being a Dharma person? In my mind, it would be because there are a bazillion colors. And since there are a bazillion colors, you really don't have to mix colors. You really don't. Your color is already there. And the colors are anywhere between $2 and something cents for the big tub like this, and maybe $7, depending on the pigment. So this is where I'm going with the scope and the ways that you can dye. Like, assuming all things are equal and we're all dyeing for fun and you're getting ready to color plan your next rug and you're in the kitchen and you've got your dyes and maybe they're Dharma or Prochem or Rit or Cushing, doesn't matter. But maybe you say to yourself, I'm the kind of person who wants a recipe book, and definitely tell me how to make that color in terms of 1/36th of a teaspoon. Could you do that? Could you tell me, speak to me in 1/36th and 1/18th, because I love that kind of a conversation. I'm not being sarcastic. If I were a cook, I would love that kind of conversation too. As I am neither a technical person nor a cook, those kinds of conversations make my eyes glaze over. And I'm much more likely to say, I know what color I want. It's flamingo pink in Dharma. So if I'm all out of that, I'm going to look through my Cushing colors, figure out what colors are closest, blend them, and I know I'm going to get the color that looks the most like flamingo because I'm super familiar with all of the lines and all of the colors and all of the brands I just talked about, except for Rit. That's the one that I don't know. And Rit has had the most flux over the years. Rit has been like the sort of, I'm going to say low end just because it's the least expensive and it's been the most readily available in pharmacies and corner shops, whereas the others have not. They are like industry dyes, right? So Rit has been different. On the plus side, Rit has been there for people all along, right? All through the most of the 20th century, but with a very limited color range and with the sort of wallet that as soon as a color is not popular anymore, they discontinue it. So they discontinued these amazing neons after the 1960s. We did not see them in the 70s. And sometimes you see the packaging for them on eBay, but you know they're probably not going to come out exactly the same anymore if they've been exposed to air or anything at all. In terms of getting the right color, we might never get the same color twice, right? Because it also has to do with water. It has to do with your water. And you might not be able to get exactly the same color I get with the recipe being exactly the same. It's nothing to be forlorn about. It's nothing to be upset about. It's just you've got to be a little bit flexible because this is folk art, right? And we're talking about color. We want a pretty close color. We don't want things to look different if you're making more color to fix a rug or to fill a space that project you picked up and you ran out. You want the color to be similar. But it will not be exactly similar. It'll never be exactly similar. And people who dye yarn for knitting and crocheting, they know that. And that's why they have dye lots. So, if you want the sweater to all be one color and you're standing at the store, you better buy all of the skeins at once, because you can see they're all the same dye lot, same day, same circumstances, same everything. No margin for error. But it's very hard to do that when you are not doing it on an industrial level, right? You're not dyeing with a cauldron, right? You're dyeing on your kitchen stove. So you already have to make these allowances and say, I might be like a hair off when I'm trying to match stuff and dye stuff, but isn't that also part of the charm of working in a folk craft, right? This is folk art. Sharon says, Blue and Yellow Don't Make Green. It's an excellent color book. Oh, that's the name of a book, Blue and Yellow Don't Make Green. The focus is on oil paint, but the theory holds for dyeing as well. Highly recommend. That's a great recommendation, Sharon. Blue and Yellow Don't Make Green. I think I've heard of that book. It might be that my mom has that. Interesting. And it's very true. It's very true. And I'll just say one more thing about color before we get started in looking at this book, because I have done classes on color theory. More than once, and they are up on Ribbon Candy Hooking. There are some basic principles of dyeing that are not intuitive, that are important for people who do dyeing. One of them is that to make a color darker or lighter, you do not add black or white. Black and white, while they are considered neutrals, or depending on your language or where you went to school, they are the absence of or the completeness of a color. But adding white to something makes it a different color. It makes it a pastel shade, depending on how much white you add of the color, and you create a new color. You are not making it lighter. And if you add a little black to something, you are not making it darker. You are making it a different color. The only way to make a color darker is to add more of the same color, right? And with dyeing, this becomes a moving target again, because when you drop a little bit of dye into your pot, and you know this if you're a dyer, you see the grains split apart and you go, Jesus, I thought this was supposed to be pink. Look at how much blue, brown, and green are in there. They are, right? They are. And if you don't wait for it to disappear in the pot and stir it in so there's no kind of pockets or grains of color that haven't popped or exhausted yet, you have to get it all swirling, get the color complete before you start using the color. If you put your wool or your yarn in there while the color is still breaking, which means the dye colors are splitting off, it hits the water and you're seeing all of these flecks of color, that's called breaking. The color breaks. If you don't stir it, mix it all up and make it one color again, you will get all those little pops of color. And that's what you see when you see these super expensive colors of yarn, like, for example, this. Right, this is like a $40 skein of sock yarn and all these wild colors on it. That's the color breaking, right? They throw it down to catch the colors, and then it catches on the material, on the yarn, and then they stir it, and the rest of it is blue. So it exhausts in the color light blue or aqua, and the rest of the popping colors have already hit the yarn and like attached to the fiber. And that's how you get these expensive yarns and these expensive wools. But if you don't want that variation, right, of color and that sort of patterning on your material, then you don't want to do that. You want to wait for the pot to be ready, for it to be stirred, and for the color to be completely ready, right? No breaking, not still breaking. So think about, as we enter this conversation, we got to start. Think about whether you are the kind of person who would love to have a book like this and say, I have the measures that show me 1/36 and 1/18, and I would love to be, have all my dyes out and make a real project of putting like a little bit of this and a little bit of that and getting the color, and that sounds really fun to me, right? If that's the kind of person you are, then these books are for you. This conversation is for you. If you are the kind of person who's like messapy, schmessapy, I just want like a pink that's a little bit orange. Then you're a person who's going to want to look at some of the contemporary dye brands like Dharma or Prochem. Mostly Dharma is the largest range for sure. And just say, that's the color I mean. I'm going to spend the $3 and buy it, right? So it really depends. We are talking about kind of a lost craft, which is dyeing with intention, and it is different than just saying I need a coral color. So when I look at this book, I open this book. It says anyone can dye from pitfalls to perfection with perfection dyes. And this is by Clarice, and these are Cushing dyes, the perfection dyes, by Clarice Cox, C-O-X. And then it says something Lane, same person. These go with these color swatches. The booklet contains, this is handwritten on the cover, the booklet contains advice on color planning, formulas for dyeing swatches, plates, and color charts for making fruit and solutions to dyers' problems. Specifically fruit, not flowers. So weirdly, all of the illustrations in here are going to be in black and white, 1952. So, I mean, that does take away a little bit from the impact, but at that time, you would be fully expecting it, right? So your imagination would be kicking into overdrive. Recipe. Oh, hey, Leah, good to see you. Taking a break from work. Great to see you. Talking about dying today with an E. So when I open this up, let me just see what some of the highlights are. Color planning. There are many methods for dyeing advocated by makers of hooked and braided rugs, but as yet none has come to my attention that entails less fuss or gives better results than the method. Okay, so they're basically advertising for this book. Just kind of skipping over stuff. If you use colors such as green or blue, use gray tones, regardless of the type of green or blue you use. So these are the kinds of outdated, I don't want to say outdated, but dated. These are the kinds of dated statements that occur in these manuals because in 1952, the sort of conversation you get is like, even when it comes from a woman, it is a shade of mansplaining. And it's like it preassumes that you all have the same taste. And that if you are using a green or a blue, you would definitely want a gray green or a gray blue, right? So the sort of color tips and color planning advice that you get in these period books, if you're making a period rug and you want that flavor, then this is the right source. But if you're making a contemporary rug and you think that that statement is universally true, that when you use whatever green or blue, it needs to have gray in it, that is not universally true, right? That's a taste thing of this time. So dyeing instructions is the next section of the book with 76 formulas. So let's jump in right now, and just so you can picture this, if you haven't done dyeing before, these are, again, are Cushing dyes. I'm going to look at them in person. I'm going to show you the slides on the screen. Well, I just found two more books. Shading with swatches. Okay, shading with swatches. Oh, so this is 50 more formulas. So this is a continuation, same author, Clarissa Cox, of this book, right? It's just like part two. She had more ideas in the dye kitchen, and she wrote a second book. And here's oh, this one actually precedes the others. This is 1948, the Rug Hooker's Dye Manual, a booklet containing over 70 exact formulas. Interesting. I think they might be the same formulas as book one. I'll have to see, because this is a tiny little thing. There's basically 4 pages, not even. I think 3 folded pages in here. Let's look and see what we got. I think I've got the right set to correspond with the first set that I have for you here. So let's look. These sets would be made using the sets of teaspoons, the double-ended sets of teaspoons that were universally used then. Sorry, Teddy calling. And again, very tiny measures, right? Going up to larger measures, of course, but we aren't talking about like using a measuring cup or anything like that. We're talking about very, very small measures, because we're talking about at-home dyeing. And at least from what I've seen of unfinished projects from, for example, the 1950s, 1960s, this era, people were so careful back then about not making too much. Like, you do get leftover noodles, but you see with kits and what's left over, if you ever are lucky enough to find a project that isn't done, there's like not one strip that's left over. Like, they were wizards at planning for how much wool they needed, and they didn't dye a lot of extra. And, you get kits that there's a couple centers on flowers, and you get like one strip in the kit, because that is actually how much you need. We tend to not do that anymore, and I certainly don't in my business. I would never give you 1 or 2 strips, even if it's just like an eyeball, because it seems so chintzy. But they were very careful about quantity in those days and wasting stuff, right? That sort of generation of not wanting to waste, right? 1952, yeah, you wouldn't want to waste your stuff. It's all of this is precious. It's your time and it's your material. So let's come over here and look at the first. I'll keep an eye on our thread and let's kind of blaze through and look at some of these colors. They are a moment in time. Let's start with number 1. This does not, the color swatch set that you're seeing is numbered. So you can see we're looking at number 1 and number 2. It's not like the first one's called Buttercup and the next one's called Marigold, for example. It doesn't work like that. So for the number 1, so just look at the one on the left right now. This is a formula that consists of Cushing colors, Cushing yellow, Cushing Buttercup yellow, and Cushing bronze. And it's actually a 1/4 teaspoon of all 3. So it's an equal measure of all 3 to get the swatch set labeled number 1, the one on the left, just the one on the left. Equal parts yellow, Buttercup yellow, and bronze. What does that mean for you if you have some Cushing packets? Does it mean you have to do a 1/4 of each one to make a quantity? No, but it does mean that however much you mean to dye, let's say you mean to dye a 1/16 or an 1/8 of a yard of material for each of these colors, and you would also like to make an ombre series, right? This is ombre because it goes from a very light value to a darker value of the same color. No additions, no other colors, no extra black or white either, right? Just the same color. So darker to lighter. And of course you would put the material into the dye bath and it would be, you would take one out, that's the lightest, then you would take another one out, second lightest, and another, third lightest, right? And the one that was in there the longest is going to be the most highly saturated in the same color. So not necessarily darker, but more highly saturated. Same color as the one on top that is the lightest one, right? That's the color theory part of it. Now, if you wanted to make a 1/4 yard or a 1/16 or whatever, each of these colors, right? Six different colors of this shade, all you would need to know is you need to put equal parts of those 3 colors, right? And then you keep an eye on it to say, okay, the light one is light enough and the dark one is dark enough, and everything in between you want to do it at pretty regular intervals and make sure that the one before it is not too close, the one after it is not too close to the one you just took out, right? Because you want there to be a visual difference between each one. So the first formula, equal parts. The second formula, the one on the right, so this is number 2, 3/4 teaspoon of bronze and 1 1/8 teaspoon of yellow. So only using 2 colors at this point and getting a fairly similar color range, except what color is missing from this recipe? The Buttercup yellow. So in the first recipe on the left, we've got yellow, Buttercup yellow, and bronze. And the one on the right, we've got yellow and bronze, no Buttercup yellow. What does that say to me? That the formula for Buttercup yellow somehow has more green in it, because the swatch set on the right is more kind of olive, a hair more olive bronzy. I would still call it golden, but it does have a different hue. And what's different, Buttercup yellow is not in that one. So it's interesting how colors, this is science, right? This is like alchemy, how colors react together with the Buttercup not being there and there being a little bit of bronze and so much regular yellow. It produces a completely different color, although the dye colors on the table are pretty similar. Interesting, isn't it? So what could you use these 2 examples for? Like, what if you made these colors, what would you use these colors for? Let's say that you were doing a fairly, I don't know, technical piece, in kind of an old-fashioned piece, and you I don't know, you were thinking, well, what do I want to use this yellow for? The book makes suggestions along those lines and says, well, hey, for number 1, I would use these for an iris, chrysanthemum, pansies, small roses, jonquils, and poppies, right? So not necessarily the petals, but the like inside, right? And for number 2, the second one, suggested uses are iris, daisies, pansies, scrolls, pears, right? And you can see that because it's a little more green, daffodils, wheat, and apples. So this is I mean, now we're talking super subjective, right? Because now the author is saying, well, the one on the right would be a good color for scrolls, but the one on the left would not. Now, how interesting is that in and of itself? Because why isn't the one on the left suggested for scrolls? Haven't you seen a lot of yellow scrolls on 1950s and 1960s era rugs? I know I have. I mean, how interesting is that? But the fact that this book says that means that a lot of people, right, the most technical people, creative people would say, screw you, I'm using it for scrolls. It's, all about me. But I'm going to go ahead and do what I mean to do, right? But there are a huge amount of people who would say, ooh, well, this one is not recommended for scrolls, so I think I won't use it for scrolls. Isn't that interesting? Because it does affect how many yellow scrolls we see coming out of this period. If enough teachers are writing down on paper in print, this is not so good for scrolls, then, or omitting it as a suggestion, people will pay attention to that, right? And it will matter. And it will affect the conversation about color theory and color planning in the middle 20th century. Just as surely as somebody working at a desk in the fashion world dictating the colors for next year, just as surely and effectively it will. So this is number 3 and number 4. I'm not going to go into great detail overall, but let's look at number 3 on the left because it is another yellow swatch set. Only 2 colors happening here. 3/4 tablespoon of yellow and 1/32 tablespoon of mummy brown. Mummy brown is a very kind of yellowy, almost pinky, like a clay brown. Very, very light value at its light. It's a very interesting color. The Cushing line is not my favorite line of colors, but I got to say, Mummy Brown is one that I have not been able to see anything like it in any other dye line, right? And when we encounter that, I'll tell you, for me, this holds true. Nothing is like Mummy Brown. I'll never let go of Mummy Brown because I can't make it with other dyes. Interesting, right? So, so when we're looking at the swatch set that is number 3, it talks about suggested uses, and it says this color should never be used in its entirety except for very gay provinciales. In other words, like florals, like Provençal style, like the French, like the blue, the yellow, the folky Tolly style, right? It's like a place and a style, except for that, and possibly in a bright chair seat within a field of flowers. Otherwise, it should never be used, right? Plain as day, right there. It makes delightful buttercups. It makes beards on irises. I didn't know that part of the flower was called a beard. But she does break down in conversation for each color. It's a very interesting read, I have to say. It's a wind up too. It's a wind because this is very specific advice, but it is interesting what was considered important to impart in terms of using and placing these colors. Number 4 is a real departure. 4 is made up of 2 colors, cardinal and turkey red. 4 teaspoons of cardinal and only 7/8 of a teaspoon of turkey red. Turkey red goes so dark so fast. Turkey red is another one that is wacky, that I can't find a replacement for. Mummy brown, turkey red, those are 2 that are exceptionally odd colors. It has got to be the chemistry of the color. And before and after citric acid, big changes, right? Big effect. Interesting. So let's see what the idea would be. Roses, poppies, provinciales, such as Penn Dutch. She says Penna Dutch. That's weird. Pennsylvania's abbreviated to Penna. Penna Dutch designs. So real specific. I mean, it's incredibly specific. They're basically, this book is comprised of a series of recipes that are very simple recipes using 2, 3, maybe 4 colors, and sometimes it tells you how to break down the timing of the color. Like it describes when it looks like this, then you take it out and whatever. But it's very, very, very technical. We are looking here at number 5 and 6. Number 5 is made up of yellow, a speck of mummy brown. It says a speck, which is like smaller than a measure. It'd be just like a little grain of mummy brown. This is the one on the left, number 5. Yellow, mummy brown, terracotta, and American Beauty. Interesting. Interestingly enough, I happen to know that the American Beauty rose, which was created or devised as a rose species at Rose was called Rosewood in Newport, Rhode Island, right? That was in the 1920s. So people still referred to the color American Beauty or American Beauty rose quite a bit because everybody was still really proud that there was a new, very fashionable and popular actual rose, and the shade of that rose was referred to a lot. We hardly ever refer to a color as American Beauty anymore, but at that time it would have still been fashionable because it would have been fairly new. So the color that we're seeing on the left is a rose color that has a hint of yellow. And maybe if you can't see it, you can kind of feel it, can't you? A hint, a speck. It's a speck of the mummy brown that brought it to that yellow undertone. Now, none of these are under-dyed, right? And we have to assume that all of these are being dyed on white wool, not natural, but white. So I'm going to kind of fly through. Number 6, Aquilon Yellow. Number 6 is just Aquilon Yellow, so no second. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Aquilon Yellow with a very few granules of plum, only for the last 2 shades. Wow. So for the first 3, the brightest 3, right? So for the first half of that run, number 6, it is just Aquilon Yellow. And for the second half, there are just a few grains of plum. Interesting, because you can see how just a few grains did darken it up a little bit. There's not a huge difference between the last 3 in that series, but the color is already quite low value, right? There is a real departure between the first and the second swatch on this. It's almost like maybe there should be one in between there. Who knows? Interesting though, isn't it? Because these are the colors of our grandmothers and maybe great-grandmothers, depending on your age. Number 7 is Mulberry, Violet, and Rust. I like this. It's only 1/8 rust, 1/32 violet, and a whole teaspoon of mulberry. Mulberry is a beautiful, historic-looking color that it basically looks like this color, with a 32nd of a teaspoon of violet, added a little bit of a purple punch to it. The rust is bringing the red out a little bit, like a darker sort of cast to it. But it's still a very bright run of purples that would be used for irises, pansies, tulips, plums, grapes, fuchsia flowers. Interesting. So sometimes the author is adding a speck or some grains of color. And it is that fine of a conversation that we're having here. Number 8 is Terracotta and Wine. Terracotta is like a clay color. Terracotta is interchangeable with the Prochem color Brick. The Dharma color that's called Terracotta is a little bit different. It's a little bit more flat and matte. So this is another situation where we have the same names between different contemporary dye brands. So for example, Mulberry. Mulberry is another one that I would say is different. For Cushing, that's another keeper for me. Rust is a moving target because Cushing's rust is just like Prochem's Brick, right? They're like interchangeable. But Dharma's rust is different, right? So interesting how, again, failure of language. Wine is another one. So Cushing wine is more for me like Prochem Sangria. And you see they are playing with names too, right? Because there has to be sort of an inspiration and an awareness of the colors that already exist. The older line is Cushing. So coming up with variations and things that are a little bit different, there is often like a shift in the language, but it can be confusing when you dye with all of the lines. Because you have to remember for yourself, well, I'm out of rust. I'm out of Cushing rust, so I'm just going to dip into the Prochem or the Dharma. It's not necessarily going to be the same color at all, like at all. Not that you would think it would be interchangeable, but you might think it would be close, and it's not necessarily close, like at all. Oh, Diane, great to see you. I like this conversation too. It's more fun than I thought, I've got to say. I have a lot of dye knowledge because I dye all the time. In fact, I'm dyeing this afternoon. I've got 3 different runs to dye, so probably like 65 colors this afternoon. And I'm used to playing with all of them, and I have figured out over time what looks like what doesn't look like what can substitute if I'm in a pinch for something, what I can put together if I run out of something else. I have figured a lot of this out, and it's in my head, which is not a good place for it. So here it comes on this show, maybe again later in the week. And I am working on a book about dyes, and that's Cordelia's Color Year. So you'll see that possibly next year. I'll have to see how it goes this year. I am working on it, but it's a big subject. Yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Okay, so did we do number 8 yet? Number 8 yet. Terracotta and wine. Now, terracotta is that kind of orangey clay color, and you can see just a hint of it, just a hint. It lifts more. It's a lighter color than rust. So on the left, there's a little bit of rust, but on the right, there's a little bit of terracotta. You can see there is a difference between those two colors. The purple set on the right has a little bit more of a clay feel to it. And I think it must be... Okay, so on the one on the right, it's in the first shade only that they add a speck of terracotta, which I find surprising because it looks to me like the fourth swatch is the one that's got the most of the pink. Interesting. In any case, I think the best thing we can do here is to name the colors so that if you are interested in dyeing and you've got maybe some of the Cushing dyes and you're thinking, I don't have a swatch set, I haven't used that color yet. Oh, thanks, Diane. Me too. I've been loving working on it. It is fun to say the names of the colors out loud, right? Say my name, because you might say, you know, dang it, I would never think that color's mulberry because that's not what I would think of as mulberry or cranberry or boysenberry or whatever. Boysenberry is a great color. That's a pro-chem color. That's a really different color. Cushing doesn't have anything like boysenberry, so it works both ways, you see. So this is swatch number 9, and this is made up of, did I skip one? Did we do these guys? Yep. Okay, so we are at swatch number 9, and this is made up of wild rose and violet, just those two colors. Wild rose, okay, wild rose and wood rose in the Cushing set are another two Cushing colors that I think are indispensable. You don't get anything like them in any other line, particularly wood rose. Wild rose is more pinky. Wood rose is more brown pink. It's very, very unusual. No substitute for that. So number 9 is made up of wild rose and violet. And violet is a very strong color. It's like if there was a primary purple, it would be what you're thinking of, like the crayon box purple. And in the example of number 9 on the left, the pink is kind of, the wild rose is almost gone from it. You're just seeing like a whisper of it in the lowest value swatches on the left. But in terms of the full color, the pink is gone. It's completely overpowered by that purple. She does talk about from recipe to recipe, if you add, and this is why these books are so great, if you want to add a little bit of silver gray to each, you could use it for this instead. You know, she tells you how you can morph the color just a little bit. You can add colors to lift the color up. It seems counterintuitive that if you added color to an existing color, let's say you pull something out of the dye pot and you go, damn it, it's too purple, that's not what I wanted. Weirdly, you can add other colors, and sometimes it seems to make it lighter, right? It can't, right? It can make it not darker, but it can't make it lighter without taking color out. But just the sort of optical illusion of what each color can do and what each color brings in terms of how much yellow is in it, right? How much light kind of white pigment is in it. That can lift an existing color. It can't reverse, but it can lift. And sometimes the results are really surprising. So looking at number 10, this is made up of just wild rose. So when you think about what is the color wild rose, there it is. It's very different than just wood rose. I wish there was just wood rose because wood rose is much more brown. Wild rose is closer to Cushing mulberry. There is a color that is called, I think also wild rose for Dharma. It is quite similar, but not as purpley. It's much more pinky, like it's more like Cushing's American Beauty Rose, right? It's a lot of information coming at you, I know. So wild rose could be used for irises, for obviously wild roses, for apple blossoms, petunias, fuchsias. But that's a good example of, without blending color, what the range of wild rose can do. It is a beautiful color, and you have to admit that is quite an old-fashioned shade of pink. It is absolutely lovely. In my mind, a color like that never goes out of fashion. This is number, I just need to take a sip. Oh, this is number 11, and number 11 is made up of 3 colors: gold, 3/4 teaspoon, bronze. Now, bronze is very brown green, but with a lot of gold. Bronze can never be metallic, right? Because we're talking about wool. But bronze is just what you would think it would be. It's very heavy green. It's a very heavy green gold with lots of brown undertones. So the color number 11 is 3/4 tablespoons of gold, 1/2 teaspoon, I'm sorry, teaspoons, all teaspoons, 1/2 of bronze, and 1/16 of bright green. Bright green is bright. Bright green is bright, but it sure ain't as bright green as Dharma's bright green. If you're ever looking for really bright green colors, right? Cushing can do it, but with a color even like bright green, it's not as bright green as Dharma's bright greens range, for whatever reason. And I think the reason is, you put it in and it's already darker than most people want their green to be in the 1950s. That's the reason in my mind. Nowadays, doing the sort of range of subjects that we do, when we say green, we're like, give me, like, oh, I can't, I probably have the green screen on. Give me green. Give me real, punch me in the throat with green. It's not the same as the Cushing green. You would need to put a lot of Cushing's bright green to get a really bright color. High saturation. If you are looking for bright greens, look at Dharma. Emerald green is a crazy green. It is really high intensity, high saturated. It's almost like if green were navy, it's emerald green. You don't have to go really dark with it, but it is powerful. Dharma Kelly green is like Cushing's bright green. It's really bright. It has a little bit more body to it. It's more of a sort of blue green, but it's not a teal. It's just a hint. It has the same kind of boldness of emerald, but a little bit of a step down, not exactly the same color. And bright green is really, really, really bright. You just use a little bit and it's very, very bright. Bright green, Kelly green, emerald green, and electric green is like Dharma's bright green, but amped up, like more highly saturated. There are 4 different greens, but I would say Kelly, electric, and bright green for Dharma can be almost interchangeable if they're all the same value. If you bring them to a higher saturation, meaning there's more dye in the water, they become different colors, but only at a higher saturation. So if you're using a packet that's called bright green, or using a tub that's called bright green, the assumption is that it's going to be bright, right? You're not going to do 3 grains, because if you do 3 grains, you're going to get a beautiful color that's great for apple blossoms or apples or whatever, but it's not going to be bright green because that color is meant to make bright green. So while you can use it at a lower saturation, meaning not so much powder, right? Not so much of it, it'll be a beautiful color, but it ain't going to be bright green, right? Because it won't come to fruition. It won't grow into its own unless you put an amount in, right, that works accordingly, in sync with the sort of destiny of the color. Bright green is meant to be bright. In other words, if I use Dharma's fluorescent safety orange, there's a color called fluorescent safety orange. When I use just a few grains, it is the most beautiful. I've never seen a color like this. It is so. It's orange. It's a little light orange. It's so soft. It looks like this. If you can see the tip of this Sharpie, it's much lighter. It's like a whisper. It's a whisper of a color, a little more pinky than that. But if you use it at its full intensity, like you put more in, it looks like a safety vest. Like it looks like you need sunglasses to look at it. But the lightest value of it is my favorite color. Same thing with Cushing's Flower Power Pink and Prochem's Rhodamine Pink. Same thing. The low rhodamine is very, very blue, as a Flower Power Pink is more of a pinky purple with Cushing, but you put a small amount in, you have got like a whisper neon. And it's like, how can it be like a neon color if it's a whisper? I don't know, but it is. Like, some colors are magic, and that's part of what I want to talk about as we talk about colors, because if you go and buy like Flower Power pink from Cushing or Rhodamine pink from Prochem, you're going to be able to know what I'm talking about. Like, you can do it in the pan and you can see it with your eyes and you can call it whatever color you want, but you're going to know exactly what I mean, because all of these colors that we're talking about are still available. So that's interesting and exciting, isn't it? Let's keep going. Barbara says, love 11 and 12. All right, let's see. Yeah, these are beautiful colors. So 12 is Reseda green. And okay, so 1 teaspoon Reseda, 1/32 of a teaspoon of plum. And if it's not gray enough, then you just add more plum to kind of kill the Reseda. Reseda is another green from Cushing that is really, really, really different. There's probably 10 colors out of the Cushing line that I bothered to fool with the packets, because I have got to have that color. Because I try not to use the packets if I don't want to, because I don't like the packaging of the Cushings. I'm sorry, I don't. It's my personal opinion. It's just too much trouble for me. Drives me nuts and gets my gloves dirty, and just, I always get it places I don't mean to get it. And I know you can transfer it into a jar, but I don't need to be spending time doing that when it's costs the same as everything else. So there are a few colors from Cushing that I could not live without, and just because they're different. Now, I don't use Reseda green often, but you can see on the right, it is a very different color. It is a very cool color. And we were just talking about bright colors that are great. And I do think that Dharma does the best. Oh my God, it's already 1. I do think that Dharma does the best with greens, but I will say Reseda green is really interesting. And the other really interesting, 3 other really interesting greens. We're going to have to stop in a minute, but we'll pick this up again. I didn't know this was going to be such a good conversation. Hopefully it is a good conversation. More talk about greens, right? Just in case you're taking notes or you rewind this. There is a Dharma, I'm sorry, yeah, these are all Dharma colors I'm going to talk about, right? We just talked about electric green, emerald green, Kelly green, and bright green in the Dharma range. Some other magic colors, Muir green, like John Muir, Muir, very exciting and interesting brown green that Dharma does. It's not like any other color. It really isn't. It's going toward bronze, but it's very different. It really holds its own, very different. They also do a color called country green that is a little on the blue side, but it is like, if you have any sort of memory of going to a cute country cafe in 1985 and they had like calico curtains, that's the country green I'm talking about. It's not a pine green, it's a blue green, but it's not a teal. It's not like a fashion-y green. It's very unusual, country green. They have another color called herbaceous that is another green with a lot of blue in it, but very unusual shade of green. And there was one more, country green, Muir, herbaceous. Dang it, there was one other. Oh, sage leaf. Sage leaf is another Dharma color. It's very soft, right? So it's not, it can go dark, but it's not meant to go high saturation. It is more blue than it is green, but it's such a soft blue. It's not like country blue. They're quite different, but those are all the colors I just named from the Dharma range. I'm doing the same thing for Dharma that I'm doing for Cushing and Prochem. Those are colors that I can't find equivalents of. So they're in the hardcore stable of great colors that if I know I want like a blue-green, I'm going to go for maybe sage leaf or country green. But I might not even mix it because I know that I have it and I know that I love those colors. And, you know, you can't overstate, if you have time to make little swatch sets for yourself, like the ones that we're looking at, I can't overstate the importance and the value of that, because you will say to yourself, oh, and we're not done with this conversation, but when I look at, let's just say, for example, this color, you know, when I think of whatever this is, mulberry, when I look at this color and I see the lowest value of it, I think, okay, so it's like, you know, it's pinky purple. Like, so is everything. Everything is pinky purple. Half my colors are pinky purple. Well, that's true, right? That's true. It doesn't have much punch when it's at its lowest value. But when I look at it at its highest saturation, right, and this is a recipe, so we're not talking about pure color, but let's say we are. When I look at it, it's higher saturation. I go, ooh, now I really have a sense of what that color is, right? Let's say I said to you, like, wait, let me think for a second. Okay, maybe hopefully this is a good reference. Let's say I said, like, oh, I can't wait until it's summer, and I love the color like tiger lily orange, right? So if you don't have tiger lilies where you are, you're like, nah, not a good reference. But if you do, you're like, ooh, I know exactly what you mean, right? It's not like pumpkin, it's not like primary orange, it's not like persimmon. It's a completely different color. Now, the color tiger lily, let's say it's in this book, it might be only tiger lily when it's at its higher value. I might not realize when I'm working on another rug and I'm looking for a softer orange that that is the perfect color just at a much lower saturation, right? We tend to be kind of colorblind to the lowest values of each color because the lower the value is, by definition, the less personality that color has, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing because you don't want all of your colors to be really potent, right? We do say as rug hookers, DLDB, dark, light, dull, bright. They can't all, well, they can, depends on your style, but typically they are not all bright. So the lighter shades, right, the light colors and the dull colors, those are just as important as the brights and the dark colors, or the really high potent, high saturation colors. So we tend to not notice them. It's like a squeaky wheel makes the most noise, right? It's like a crowd of people, and three of them are giving you a hard time, and the rest of them are super nice, like quiet people. You don't notice them. You appreciate them more, but you don't notice them as much because they're not as noisy. Well, colors work the same way. So it is always nice to put together your own swatch set. If you have the time, just say, like, this week, I don't have that much time. I'm going to try to put together, I'm going to dye 3 times this week, right? That's my goal. Each night I'm going to do like 5 different colors, right? I'm going to spend an hour at the stove. I'm going to do 5 different colors, and that's all I can do this week. But I'm going to use the colors that I have. I'm going to keep my swatches documented, however, whatever your system is. And then I'm going to know the full range, the full possibilities. You know, it's like a color is a personality. And you know, with your friends, you know their personalities, right? They all, everything's come out, right? Everything's come out over coffee or drinks or whatever. But people you don't know as well, right? You don't know what the full range is. And if you've got colors sitting on your shelf and you're like, well, I think I know what cranberry looks like. I'm not, is it like red, or is it wine red, or is it blue red, or is it purple red? You don't really know. It's a good time to make a swatch set, right? High saturation to low saturation of that range, so that you do know the way that that color can perform. Now, whether or not you choose to put together a dye book with infinite color combinations, and it is infinite, isn't it? Is up to you, right? It might be that that is your passion in life, and if you do, I hope you document it so Ribbon Candy Hooking can publish that book. But you know, you can go into crazy minutia when it comes to infinite dye colors. But you could also just get a really good handle on the colors that you already have, and that's also a great way to figure out what colors you are missing. I'm going to return to this conversation. We'll have to see what day. I'll shoot for Wednesday, returning at 11 for this conversation, because on Friday, I'm sorry, not on Friday. Friday's my birthday and I'm out. But on Sunday, we're having our gallery night. So make sure that you're sending your stuff to me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com for gallery night on Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, let's try to think between now and our conversation, now and the time that our color conversation ends. Think about the colors, if you're a dyer, that you use, whether they are Rit or Cushing or whatever. Think about colors that you use straight from the bottle and you think, ooh, this is a crazy color. I can't make this color any other way. This is a magic color. And let's refer to those colors as magic colors, and let's share them with each other so that everyone who's a dyer can say, ooh, you know, I don't know. I have not heard of those Cushing colors, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to give you one more and then I'm going to log off. Pro Chem Imperial Blue, craziest blue you'll ever see. It's not exactly this blue. It might be. This might be a lower value of it. It can be a much darker, very vivid blue. It is the most, if blue could be neon, it is the most neon blue I can imagine. Imperial Blue Pro Chem is a wild color. So let's keep track. It's a magic color. Let's keep track of our magic colors so that when we have this conversation here on the show and we're talking about color, we could say, someone says, oh, what color, this happens all the time, what color should I do the background? Help me color plan the background of this. And if we're talking in the same language and we have the same words assigned to colors, someone could say, well, imperial blue, it's got to be imperial blue, like a mid shade, mid tone of, we have more language together that we can use that's universal, right? Apples for apples. So yeah, we'll come back to this soon. Would be fun to include some recipes in Magpie Times. Absolutely, that's a great idea. I always meant to do that in Magpie. I have not gotten around to it. But you know what? If anybody's doing any dyeing or whatever, and you come up with great recipes, just write them down. You never know whether it'll be a recipe that's like, that other people will love using. You can always put together some recipes, put something into Magpie Times, or hook just one facet of your piece with a color that you come up with, and then photograph it and put it in Magpie so we can look at it and go, ooh, that's different. God, look at, use this color pink and this color pink. Wow, I would have called this pink and I would have called this pink, but obviously they are not the same color pink. How did you do that? Would be really helpful if we could do this with each other. And I think it would be, far be it for me to say, because I'm like lazy daisy, but I think it's great to be able to say this color works great right out of the jar without having to mix it, or to mix a very, very simple recipe. Recipes that include 4 different colors and a pinch of this and a granule of that can be a lot, because it assumes that the person has all those colors. This dye book does not start with primary colors. The recipes in this book are not from primary red, primary yellow, and primary blue. They are not. They're from mulberry and reseda green and terracotta and rust and cardinal and mummy, and they're not primary colors. This color system, anyone can dye, assumes that you have all of the Cushing packets. It assumes that, because you can't make these colors if you don't have all of the packets. So that's a hell of an assumption right there. This is a marketing device. This only works if you have those colors. Although, if you were going to try to make, whatever, this color from primary colors, man, what a pain that would be, right? It would be like grains of this and that would really be a pain, and it would be so difficult to do. You want to start with mulberry and red wine, right? Because you're 90% there before you even put the dye in the water. So it's interesting to think of it in those terms too. We have more choices now, and the dyes are very inexpensive, right? Relatively very inexpensive. We're not talking about like oil paint, are we? Like where you could spend $300 on a tube of paint, right, to have the right color white. It's not like that for us in rug hooking. So we're very lucky that there are dyes that are affordable and come in small quantities. Let's just share what we know about them so that we can build our dye vocabulary, and we can build our... Is that you, Ten? You going to come say goodbye? What? He might come and say goodbye. In any case, I plan to be back with you on... He's home because it was a half day. He had the doctor's appointment, then he came straight home, which I'm very happy about. Ted, you want to come say goodbye as I log off?
Yeah.
I'll try to be back to you on Wednesday. I don't see why I shouldn't, unless something crazy comes up. I should be back with you on Wednesday. We can continue this conversation.
Hey, Mama.
Hey, my man.
Sorry, I just got a button on my shirt real quick.
Oh, yeah. No, it's okay. You're covered up. You're not naked. He's not topless. There he goes. Reseda Green. Dave says, Reseda Green was my 5th grade. Oh, Reseda Green was my 5th grade teacher. I love the name. That's funny. Oh, get in there. Get your little face in there. There he is. There he is. He went to church with me yesterday. It was the youth group day, and it's the soup. It was the soup kitchen day. They made soup, and he made the soup. He helped with the soup. He cut the
lettuce and the lettuce and the onions.
The lettuce and the onions. He did great.
All right.
He did. I love you too.
Goodbye, guys.
All right. Everybody's saying hi to you, Ted. All your buddies are saying hi. Hey, thank you. Thanks, Michelle. I will see you all back. Let's plan for Wednesday again, unless like Henny Penny, the sky falls or something. I'll be back with you on Wednesday. Let's talk more about colors. In the meantime, think of what your magic colors are. Or, here's another one. Or find a piece of wool or color in a rug that you have. Take a picture of it in as natural light as you can. Send it to me. In part of our next episode, we could be looking at that color and trying to figure out how it was made. That'd be fun too, wouldn't it? All right. I will see you all on Wednesday. Have a great afternoon, a great day tomorrow, and I will be back with you at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on